Great. Well, good morning, everybody. It is absolutely lovely to be here. One fun fact that wasn't mentioned before, I am a recovering aerospace engineer, and between my husband and I, we've launched over 150 satellites over the last 20, 25, 30 years, and I am 100% loving the fact that this oversees San Diego airports. If I'm caught staring off into space, I'm looking at the airplanes. But thank you again so much for having me here, to Khadija and to the Commission for this important conversation. As Khadija mentioned, I very recently joined the GovOps family, and I can tell you very much that efficiency and innovation are fundamentally at the core of what we do. We support our more than 150 state departments across the entirety of the state government to ensure that we're continuously accelerating innovation and developing a skilled workforce so that we are delivering services to the citizens of the great state of California. Our goal is to make sure that we're delivering a much more efficient and effective and engaged government that provides that highest level of service to all folks here. As has been mentioned many, many, many times here in this room earlier this morning, we are a very large state, fourth largest economy, with, of course, a tremendous diversity of skills and peoples, and because of that, I am a big, firm believer that we are an incredibly strong state, and we're very well positioned to take AI for good and into the next half, or the second half, or third, or if you will, of the 21st century. We in the state government have been doing a lot of work on this front. My predecessor, Amy Tong, is instrumental in ensuring that we were leveraging the use of advanced analytics and implementing new technologies at agencies like the California Department of Technology, as well as the Office of Digital Innovation, to again ensure that we are informing the work that we're doing to provide great service. But the state can and should be doing more to help meet California's high expectations. We all live off of that supercomputer that we hold in our hand called mobile phones, and the more that we can be delivering services that help meet that type of mission, the better we are all for it. We're leading the nation in our state government in testing and implementing Gen AI in the public sector, harnessing that power of transformation. So, for example, the Office of Data and Innovation has delivered a groundbreaking new Engaged California project. If you all haven't had a chance to check it out, please do so. It's the first in the nation's digital democracy platform, and it's very much intended to give all Californians a say in shaping our policies. And we piloted that program during the LA wildfire recovery. We're also using Gen AI to help enhance customer service at many of our departments. One such example is the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. They just implemented an AI solution in its call center to help reduce the time that it takes to handle an average customer inquiry. And it also helped enhance the content and the substance, providing additional references for the customer service representative as they're addressing the questions from the various folks that call in. I recently had an opportunity to observe it in action, and it was just really fun to see the attentiveness and the direct, high-quality interaction that the customer service representative was able to provide the callers, which candidly brought back a lot of memories for me because as an immigrant kid, I was the one calling the tax departments, the IRS, Social Security, et cetera, on behalf of my parents who didn't speak English very well. And so it was just super cool to see that a 12-year-old me would have had a really good interaction if that had been available back in the day. So I'm very glad to see that California state government is 100% leading the way in that regard. With that, allow me to close by saying thank you again so much for coming and having this really important conversation. It's not just a one-time thing. We're going to continue to have this conversation. Please be sure to send us your ideas and ensure that we are all partnering together as we lead towards a better California. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine, for your leadership. We cannot wait to see what you accomplish on behalf of our communities and on behalf of the state of California. Now, on to our next panel. Our next panel will explore how AI can be a force for good. Is that AI? Yes. We hear a lot about how AI is going to replace jobs, and we're going to flip the narrative a little bit. We're going to see how we're going to work with what's coming to us. How AI can be a force for good, empowering small businesses, expanding financial inclusion, and opening new opportunities for Californians in a rapidly evolving economy. Join me in welcoming our moderator, Darren Touch, Meta's Public Policy Program Manager, whose work focuses on building trusted partnerships that advance innovation with impact. He'll be helping us unpack how AI can be force for good. I'm really excited about that, actually. Our panelists, my dear friend Amy Tong, Senior Counselor to the Governor, Newsom, and former Secretary of Government Operations Agency, who has led groundbreaking reforms in technology and equity. And joining us all the way from DC, Zaki Barzinji, Senior Director at the Aspen Institute, whose work connects technology, civic engagement, and public policy. Please help me welcome our panel on stage.
I'm gonna actively sit on this side so I don't see the airplanes and get distracted. I know Christine likes looking that way, so Christine, we're gonna watch the stage here. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully this is gonna be a very dynamic panel. There's a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy, very caffeinated, I must tell you that. Can everyone hear me? We're good? I'm naturally also a very loud person, so if we don't need this, we can talk naturally. Now, I'm excited to be moderating this panel. Khadija, Jason, thank you for your leadership and for the commission for inviting us here. My name is Darren Touch. I'm a public policy manager at Meta, covering a lot of our innovation technologies. If you think about our wearables, our open source AI models like Llama, our immersive tech like VR, kind of covered the gamut over the year. Just a temperature check here. How many of you use AI tools in your day-to-day work? Wow, the number is, yeah, there's a lot of people actually. There's also AI in the background. So whether you use ChatGPT or Meta AI, it's around us. It's around us in government, it's around us in small businesses, and you just may not know that. California has long been the epicenter of global innovation. The theme, California grown and globally known, is fitting. I myself am an outsider here. I profess I am an honorary Californian, but a Canadian, just for those of you who don't know. Outsiders, yeah, I'll tell you that. We all watch what's going on in California really closely. It's not only the innovations that come out, but also the ingredients that make California such a success on the global stage. You know, Shenzhen, China looks towards Silicon Valley. Waterloo, Canada looks towards Silicon Valley, and all the innovations from San Diego to Los Angeles to even San Francisco. And even Texas. I think the Texans look very, very closely to what's happening in the state. And it's because of the world-class universities like San Marcos, the diverse entrepreneurial workforce, and the startups that really make this state a success. And at the forefront of that is the AAPI community that has shaped and played a vital role in ensuring the state remains dynamic and entrepreneurial, ensuring that growth is inclusive overall. Now, Meta has long been proud to call California our home. Our headquarters is in Menlo Park, and I would say it's at the heart of the innovation ecosystem out here. It started with Facebook's mission to really connect people, building technologies, empowering communities, and creating economic opportunities for all. Today, we're investing in the next generation of artificial intelligence, the next computing platform, and wearable technologies that will allow you to connect with each other and AI as well. We're proud to support California's leadership in being the most innovative state in the United States. We're deeply committed to California's success. And overall, today's conversation, I want to talk about three things. One, California innovation. Two, the adoption by government, adoption by small businesses, and the AAPI community, and how we can continue that growth overall. I'm delighted to be joined here by Amy and Zaki. Amy is from the government, senior counselor to the governor, and she's had 30 years or 3 decades of experience in gov tech, I would say. She played a critical role during COVID in leading and ensuring that technology was a part of the solution there. And Zaki is a senior director from the Aspen Digital Institute, where he oversees a range of projects at the intersection of tech policy and justice for underrepresented communities. He has more than a decade of experience at the state and the federal level, having served in the White House and with the governor of Virginia, I believe, as well, in that sense. So thank you both for being here. I'll start off with an easy question. Why are you excited about AI? Are there any use cases in your world right now that sparks a curiosity and interest and a passion? Amy?
All right. Well, thank you for the introduction, and glad to be here. And yes, I think when we were the three of us talking during the break time, we're like, we have to be the most dynamic panel because we are standing between you and lunch, right? So we got to make sure your time is worthwhile. So what makes AI exciting? I think this is one of those areas that, even though I have decades, I can't believe you say 3 decades.
It was 30 years online.
Yes, Yeah, the startup was 3, just to be exact. With all those tech background, seldom you hear or you see a technology transformation in the community that involves more than the technology by itself. And I think as people look at it, when I had the opportunity to run the Government Operations Agency, which, by the way, I just wanted to make a plug. I was so pleased when Christine was appointed as the undersecretary. We even wear the same GovOps uniform today, right? Total same color, a lot of coordination going on. The fact that when the governor was looking at how does AI or California continue to exert leadership in the AI, it wasn't a tech-only conversation. It was about workforce development. It was about the impact utilization. What does it mean in the community? It's about leaving those that are typically being left behind. How do we make sure they're not being left behind this time around? So it's really about inclusion. And on top of all of the techie conversation that I'm sure many of you continue to hear, the data, the security, and all that. And the fact that AI is almost like another reinvigoration of how California, not only for the economic development aspect, but the technology leadership. And I was so impressed by the earlier speaker, Corinne, that you're talking about satellite, you way over there. That is the California that we know. And then the fact that 32 of the 50 AI company headquartered in California, this is our opportunity to shine.
Zaki? Thank you again. Thank you also for having me. I just want to say off the bat, I really want to be a Californian. So this is kind of my desperate approach to being welcomed. My brother lives in LA. My 2 sister-in-laws live in LA. So the force of gravity. Also, DC is not the most appetizing place to be right now. So eager to get out. I've spent most of my career going back and forth between jobs that were focused on community engagement and jobs that were focused on tech policy. As you alluded to, I worked for the governor of Virginia as his tech policy advisor. But before that, I was on his campaign, and I was the Virginia director of outreach to Asian American communities. And so my job was to help elevate and amplify stories from our communities across Virginia as we went on a gubernatorial campaign. I also spent time in the White House as an outreach director to marginalized communities. And since then, I work at a tech company. And now, in my current job at Aspen, I kind of combine all of those things of community engagement and tech policy and the impact of tech on communities. So when I think about the things that I'm excited about, it's anytime I see an opportunity for technology to amplify and empower our communities, it's something that I can get behind. And I have, I guess, a very personal story on this. I think most people here, I'm half Asian, half Arab American, and all American. And my grandfather immigrated from Kashmir, which, as you might know, is the northern part of the Indian subcontinent. And for the longest time, he refused to talk about any of his time growing up in Kashmir. For him, history started upon arriving in the U.S. It's only now in the last couple of years, and he's in his late 80s, that we've finally got him to start talking about his experiences and stories during his time in Kashmir. And what we've been doing is voice recording everything that he says to us. But he has a very long way of speaking. He goes off on tangents. We have to ask him, multiple questions. We have to kind of steer him back. And so these voice notes are like more like hours long, and they are all over the place. So I started experimenting with Notebook LLM, the tool that Google provides, and I uploaded all of these voice notes, and I used it to transcribe all of the stuff that he had said, but then also used it to organize his thoughts into a coherent narrative in his first. It was in written form, but in his first-person voice. And then I read back to him what what Notebook LLM had generated, and it was his story told from his perspective using his words. But it was, the narrative was made stronger because it kind of focused on that. And he started crying as I was reading it back to him, because he was like, "That's my story. And I haven't heard my story told back to me like that." And he was like, "That's right. Every time I read a line." And that to me, the ability to preserve our histories, our heritages, where we come from, that makes me extremely excited and hopeful, and just moved by the power that AI holds for us. But it's only the good of AI is only going to outweigh the bad of AI if we make some major interventions right now. Otherwise, I fear that good will be drowned out by the bad.
And I would say, one of the things that I would be most excited about is these are AI glasses, the best form factor of us utilizing AI. And so if I put these on, we now have live translations that allow folks to actually process the environment around them, right? And so if you're from the BLV community, the blind and low... Oh, just talk to me. If you're from the blind and low vision community, we now have AI that's able to support them in seeing the environment and really living an independent life. Another example of this, for example, are language barriers. Growing up, I was also a translator for my parents and my grandparents. They spoke Cambodian but did not speak a lot of English. And so I played a vital role at parent-teacher conferences with the government in utilizing my limited Cambodian to try to translate and bridge that gap. Well, these glasses now are able to allow folks to have conversations, right? It's allowing folks to be able to see text in another language, translate it, or actually have a conversation in real time. And before this feature was even released, I had a colleague who's an engineer at Meta. His grandfather was at a seniors residence and felt quite isolated because he didn't speak English, couldn't read what was on the boards at all because it's all printed in English, right? He gave his grandfather a pair of this, and it translated it from English into Mandarin. And all of a sudden, his grandfather was able to go to these classes and be a part of that community. I'm seeing these glasses adopt across the board. I'm really, really excited by this feature in particular. But if folks haven't had a chance to try this, we do have demos outside. In terms of government adoption, Amy, I would love to talk to you more about how the government is thinking about adopting AI. I heard from Christine there are some projects in play there. What are the major opportunities and challenges in terms of the government embracing? Because it seems to be a major conversation. There's a major push to integrate AI into an efficiency model.
Yeah, definitely. So right now it's 2025. We all know AI has been in the works for many, many actually years, and it wasn't until the generative AI that started in 2023 where the conversation have been brought up to a whole different level. And that's when I was helping the administration and the governor to issue the executive order back in 2023, September, specifically looking at how the state of California could actually apply the utilization of AI into our everyday work as a way of learning from doing it. There has been a lot of conversation about the policy and this and that, and I think one thing that you would know from this particular governor, he's like, hey, talk is one thing, we need to really learn from, the experience that we gain. So that's really the essence, in 2023 to issue that executive order, not only to do a lot of the proof of concept that Christine has mentioned, actually one of them specifically is working with the Health and Human Services Agency in California to do language access pilot. And what we're talking about, the language access, is not simple translation, but it's a translation with empathy and cultural appropriateness. That is especially important in the API community just because of the number of languages that is categorized as API. And that is something we're very fortunate able to do that proof of concept. Two, that aside from learning, applying to many of the governmental services, making sure, again, the communities of this diverse background are not left behind. So we was very, very intentional to include a lot of the conversation in the community around the state of California to make sure they, tell us that not only to use it, to understand it, to start, use it appropriately at the same time and not being misled by the AI not so good part of it. And that was a very important part of engagement. And how's that, lead to the current work that I'm doing, which have the fortunate opportunity to do this government efficiency. And I want to say, when people think about government efficiency, sometimes they have like, pause a minute, is this Doge? Absolutely not. We were very, very intentional from the fact that, number one, doing government efficiency is a nonpartisan issue. But how do you do it is very, very important. In California, and this is why that when the governor and I had a conversation, we're like, we got to do it in the California way, which is achieving efficiency, effectiveness, and engagement. And the engagement is what we talked about, this community engagement, all of the voices that we need to incorporate into how government services should be improved and deliver to meet their need. And that's why also Christine mentioned that Engage California was the launch that back in earlier this year as an initial AI-enabled digital platform to do this type of engagement with California. The effectiveness, I know Zaki, you're going to go into a little bit more later on, is that people think efficiency is about cutting, it's about disrupting the workforce, and in fact, folks are coming to me and say, "Oh my God, are you going to use AI to replace our workforce?" We're like, no, that's not our intent. The efficiency ties to the effectiveness side of it. Is how do you use these tools to perhaps augment some of the maybe the more mundane side of the work.
Can I ask that aha moment? So when you were doing all these engagements,
Yeah.
what was the turning page where they were like, oh, this is actually a tool where I could see myself using?
Well, it's the fact that lots of training and context needs to be explained to folks on utilizing the tool. It's not just giving somebody, well, maybe the iPhone these days, you can just give it to somebody and start using it. But when you're introducing something this big that has society impact, it takes a lot of conversation.
It wasn't that easy from the beginning when we had these new, like the iPhones. It took me a bit of time to feature.
Yeah, there's a transition phase.
Exactly, there's
right.
a transition phase that needs to be part of it.
And I think when it comes to AI, you don't have a long runway, but you have to create that by creating the dialogue, and that's the engagement part of it.
Can I ask this room, are folks comfortable with AI in their world right now? Overall, so there is that. So we are in that transition phase, right?
We're in that transition phase. I would say the hands that you see raised in this room, it's already more than the hand that was raised in 2023.
There we go.
Yeah. So just quickly wrap up, and I know you want to go to Zach on that. The effectiveness of the government is how do we use AI or policy change?
Yep.
And I know earlier Karana talked about a lot of the policy change and the implementation. How does that affect the small business in California, the economic engine? Those are part of the conversation, is how do you make government effectively serving the residents of California? That's the role I'm at.
Zach, I want to turn to you on this as well. You've served in a number of governments from Virginia to DC to the Obama White House. Your thoughts, 10 years from 2014 to now, AI adoption in the government, or even tech adoption, right? The modernization of public services, procurement, all of that. What has that trend been for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so as I said before, I worked for the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, as his tech policy advisor. Somewhat similar to a role that Amy has now, except I did not have over a decade of experience. I was some punk kid in my 20s. And I came in with this I'm going to reform government. I'm going to use the tech policy portfolio to disrupt left and right. And it was, I failed miserably because I did not have the respect and the understanding for how government actually works. My focus was on modernization for modernization's sake. It wasn't on how do we actually improve the delivery of service to the people who need it most in our state. And I think, to Amy's point, that's why I mean, I'm from DC, and I would say over the last year, this idea of government efficiency has become so narrowly defined. This idea that government is more efficient when you just hack off a lot or when you automate processes. Efficiency is important, but it cannot be the only determinant of success for modernization. The ultimate determinant of success is effectiveness. Are you helping the people that need it most in the most effective way possible? And I think that's a big reason right now why why there's this kind of false binary where either you're pro-innovation, you're pro-modernization, or you're pro-big government and pro-status quo. That's a BS binary. It's possible, and in fact, it's important and urgent for us to be pro-modernization, pro-innovation, but in a way that ultimately puts the communities that are most at need at the center of every process. And I would say on the AI front specifically, again, I come from DC, and I think it's very interesting to compare and contrast what's happening in the federal government versus what's happening here in California. For example, I would say one big thing that we haven't talked about yet is the power of procurement to drive the future of innovation, especially around AI. Some of you might be aware that the Trump White House released a woke AI executive order that basically said if any tech company wants to do business with the federal government, they have to ensure that their AI products fit some very vague notion of not producing woke results in their responses. And it was narrowly defined. I mean, it was vaguely defined, so no one knows what that means. And yet, companies immediately started acting upon it and said, well, we want to do business with the federal government, so we better figure out how to make our AI models less woke. There is a similar opportunity with California being the fourth largest economy in the world to not necessarily make the exact opposite requirement in procurement, but to bring these principles of community inclusion into the development of new AI products and systems, and to sort of use the power of procurement to require companies to ultimately build and innovate and move forward and break things, but to do so with community involvement at every phase of the product development lifecycle. So that's what I think the future is.
Amy, do you want to touch upon procurement by chance? Because I know we talked about this.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very well said, Zach. I think one of the things I want to double down, and in fact, procurement is also one of those decades-long, passion of mine. It's just like, how do you, again, make procurement work for the business, make procurement work for the government entity that needs those services, but then how do you leverage the fourth largest economy, that the California has as a way to drive, the narrative of how do we shape some of this. And to that point, in the executive order that was issued in 2023, specifically on AI, has a procurement clause to talk about what are the intentionality of utilizing procurement to drive these AI for good, as opposed to perhaps you want that as a controlling factor. I think that's the difference we're looking at. If you involve the community's voice, if the intention is making sure that those that deserves most services and not being left behind, then you incorporate the power of procurement very differently than if you want a procurement as a controlling mechanism. And I think that's the fundamental differences, how California treating procurement in the space of AI and many, many other sector.
Before we move on to small businesses, just one last question in terms of what areas of government are you most excited about in terms of AI playing a larger role? So forest fire might be a good example in the state of California. What are the other departments or sectors that you'd like to see embrace AI a bit more?
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that as we seeing more and more of the AI use cases being adopted. At the beginning, it was like all those cool factor, and I don't dispute that at all. In fact, like these glasses you're wearing, that's really cool. That is from the consumer aspect, right?
Those are the consumer side.
But from the government, we have seen more and more evidence. Actually, AI really helped from the administration, the operation side of government. And that's where we can see value. And yes, this notion of government is just big and is bureaucratic, and there's many things that why are you taking 10 days? It could have been done in 10 minutes. Many of those are true. Yeah. right? But is that a purely an automation solution, or is this a policy and implementation process change? That is the combination of what we're focusing on. But I would say, from what I've seen so far, a lot of the operation side could really benefit from AI.
Now, just shifting to small businesses, startup, we're seeing just an embrace in one way where a lot of the startups now are in fact AI startups. They're building with either proprietary models or an open source models, but there are also a lot of AI tools to support businesses to be much more efficient in engaging with their customers or expanding to a certain market. Zaki, I'll turn to you on this one here in terms of small businesses. Were there any use cases or examples that you've seen just AI tools being able to help propel economic growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the most urgent need is improving the delivery of social benefits and services to the people who need it the most. And when I think there's a lot of AI companies that are just trying to focus on like what is going to be most palatable and going to get the biggest contract with state or city government. But there's other companies that genuinely are focused on how do I focus again on the effectiveness of delivering these benefits to the people that need it the most. And I think there's been a lot of innovation around that. You've seen a lot of, obviously everyone who works in the state of California and has worked at different agencies knows that the delivery of benefits to one citizen can come from like 5 different agencies. And each agency can have its own system for how they, how you go through them to get the benefits that you're supposed to, receive from them. And for the average person who's in need, especially if they come from, an immigrant community, navigating those barriers and getting to the actual benefit that you are entitled to can be a almost impossible task, especially if you have to do it for 5 different agencies with 5 different systems. So the best applications of AI I've seen are the ones that have automated that process and tailored the process specifically to the user that's trying to use it, because that means that person it can literally be a life-saving innovation.
I think that's a powerful point. Personalization, right? And being able to tailor a solution towards the customer or the citizen.
And you just reminded me, I should have known. I mean, even though we're in San Diego, we're neighboring to the LA County here. And then we all know that LA suffered this great loss through the LA fire that just back in February. In fact, that's when I thought I had, 2025 to do more AI stuff. But the minute the LA fire occurred, I went back to my other hat, which is crisis response, just similar to the role that I played doing COVID response. And it was through that experience, literally, I lived on Southwest, like flying up and down from Sacramento to LA all the time doing those months. It was the expectation of the residents in a recovery effort have evolved so much from going to a physical location to get help to I should be able to do this online. I should be doing this in any wee hours of the day. Yeah. And to many of the immigrant family, their parents might be affected, but their children are somewhere else. They're not going to come to a physical disaster recovery center in LA to help fill out a request for a license replacement or some type of vital record. All those, first of all, needs to be online. 2, people say, well, online, that's good. That's not good enough because guess what? Nobody is going through a disaster response on a regular basis. Yeah. Like they have a playbook. Oh, this is what I need to do. These are the 5 steps I need to go through. And expecting a website to give you a checklist, you just go through that and somehow your life is going to better, does not work. Which is why the administration has already moved forward for an AI assistant, recovery effort to help those individuals that are not only in shock, and there's so many, tasks and paperwork that in front of them. How do you make that is very tailored to their needs at the right moment, at the right, steps that they need to do, right then, so that they don't miss deadline, they don't do that. That to me is governmental services at its core and helping those people at most need.
And I can see that, especially for small businesses that, it's just shifting it to if you want to start a company, there's a lot of paperwork involved. And so these tools can actually make it much more easier. And we're going to see an emergence of many more companies be created as creating a website can be just a snap of a finger like that. I wanted to talk about public-private partnership and working with industry, government, and civil society in terms of AI adoption and just the development of AI there. What are your thoughts?
Public-private partnership, gosh, where should I begin? I think this is where looking at whether it's philanthropic investment or venture capital and looking at governmental services. First of all, we all know, and the budget situation in the state of California is not great. We're broke, right? But it's also, to me, it's the best opportunity to seek for efficiency, to seek for creativity, because when you have lots of money, I've never experienced one of those have lots of money that I don't need to worry about next day, but this is when, and I say many times, is the immigrant spirit and the entrepreneurship spirit. When you're faced with a challenge, your creativity shine. Yep. And so in the moment where the state needs a lot of continued growth, but do not have the means to do so solely based on general fund, we rely a lot of partnership with public and private entity. In this case, the philanthropy has come. We have been talking to them to share the idea. Say, hey, if you focus on this particular specific use case, whether it's health, whether it's permitting for housing, whether things like that, what can you do? We have many of the VC actually in conversation with the state of California to say, look, there may be business case that instead of a company starting something that, think about it, whether there's a market, we can help you assess whether there's a larger market in the state of California. So let's partner on those. Let's make your return on investment as a common goal, not only for the business that invests in, but the goal for the state of California, how do we deliver these services much faster with the partnership. So we talk about that a lot, and I think this is one of the area why it's quite fitting with today's theme of the conference. Economic development is not just a private sector focus, a state focus. It should be something that we come together and do it jointly.
And the amazing thing is, as the person from out of here, we've released a lot of interesting technologies. Government has come and said, how can we utilize your VR? How can we utilize your open source model or even these glasses to get people into the workforce, for example, to get people trained? So it's always been a collaborative effort in a lot of ways. Zaki, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I removed this little fluffy thing. Yes, I think I obviously agree with everything that Amy said, who has a ton more experience in this than I do. I think that in terms of making a business case, I think public-private partnerships have the ability and the responsibility to make the business case for the inclusion of communities, not just in the usage of these technologies, but in the actual design and building of these technologies. Because at the end of the day, the future of California, the future of this country, is only going to serve those who are actively building it. And if we're not involving communities like AAPI communities, at every stage of the development of these new technologies, these technologies are not going to serve them. And that is a big problem when it comes to equity, but it's also a big problem when it comes to expanding your user base. If your product does not work well for a huge chunk of the population, whether it's in California or across the country, then that's a big amount of addressable market that you're leaving out. And so I think there's the potential. We talked about the power of procurement already. But there's also, I think, the responsibility of government to come in and say, we want to do business, we want to tackle these solutions together, but we also want to reject this false binary of, either, you get regulated and you can't ever, deploy your product, or we stay completely out of your way and don't do any regulation and you just build whatever you want and see what happens. There is a middle ground there, and I think public-private partnerships need to be able to strike that middle ground if we're actually going to succeed and have successful partnerships.
I just wanted to check on time here, because I got the signal at one point. We have the Q&A. Okay, so I am going to do a scan from this side to this side. Winner, winner, chicken dinner right here. Oh.
Thank you. My name is Lang Lei. I work for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Southern California. And my question was, I was wondering what kind of existing safeguards and mechanisms are in place to ensure that AI is not reproducing these structural and systemic inequalities and biases especially in critical areas like healthcare, housing, and of course employment?
Allow me to be the pessimist on the stage. What few safeguards I think existed are rapidly being eroded and taken away. And I think it is, I already talked about, the Trump administration's EO on woke AI. In the first few months of the administration, J.D. Vance went to the big AI conference and said, I do not want to hear the word trust and safety mentioned anymore when it comes to AI. We need to be getting out of the way. And so I think there's a rapid erosion of those principles and safeguards. And you can see it even across all these tech companies. A lot of their teams are being reduced or taken away altogether, the ones that focus on these issues. Not to pick on Meta, but like Meta's entire civil rights team has been totally eliminated from the company. And the two of the people that were running it were my friends. So I can say, very clearly that it's a clear indication of the direction that the technology is going in right now. That said, the opportunity that we have, I think, is to help our communities themselves become better advocates and more informed advocates into how they can intervene in the product development process. And understanding the way that machine learning lifecycle works is a key part to ensuring that our communities are able to advocate more effectively. So at every stage of the development of an AI product, there's an opportunity for intervention. From the very first step of machine learning, which is problem formation, defining what the problem is that your product is going to solve, the people that are defining that problem, if they are not representative of the communities that they're serving, are going to define a problem that's not actually faced by all the communities that they serve. And so having people in the room from our communities at the problem formation phase is extremely important. And that's something that we should be advocating for, that government should be advocating for and requiring. The second, obviously, biggest stage is data set selection. The efficacy of these products that we're talking about depend entirely on the quality of the data. If we're using data sets, as you said, that sort of are misrepresentative or underrepresentative or contain a lot of stereotypical data about certain communities, no matter how great your app is, it's going to generate problematic results. And so requiring a very close attention be paid to the data set selection phase of these companies that are producing AI products is a very important step that needs to be taken. And if the federal government's not going to do it, then maybe the state of California should do it and should require that the data set selection phase needs to be checked and rechecked, and it needs to be opened up to communities to ensure that these data sets are actually representative and not going to further induce harm. The last stage that I'll talk about is the testing phase. Before a product is released into the wild, into the public, most companies test it for vulnerabilities, whether it's security vulnerabilities or try to see if it doesn't work. They try to break it, actively try to break their products before they release them. Generally, it's other teams within the company that try to do that. I think a much more positive step would be to bring communities into the testing phase of these products to try to break those products before they're released and to break them in ways that only they know how. We've been doing a workshop at Aspen called Inclusive Red Teaming, where we go to different communities and we encourage them to come up with prompts for like ChatGPT and Sora and Grok, come up with prompts that are very specific to their own lived experiences and identities and see how well those models react. Oftentimes it breaks those models. And that process of trying to break these models needs to be built into the product design process itself, and communities need to be involved in that stage of the process. I think most communities don't even know how to insert themselves into that product development cycle. And so that's a big step that I think needs to be taken. It's just basic education of how these things are built. And that'll help, I think, increase the representation of communities and also hopefully lead to more, or less destructive applications in the future.
Oh, yeah, three really, really short points on top of what Zach already said. The bill number escaped my mind at the moment, but recently the governor just signed into law, right? Everybody, yes, you know about that. And then that holds the large frontier company accountable for certain level of AI for good. I'll just leave it at that. Two, in fact, inside of it, talking about the red teaming, the ability to test, the ability to checks and balance a lot of this model, we have seen the companies that are going so far ahead on making these products available but not so far ahead in investing into that component of it, the testing part of it, the checks and balance and recting part of it. Many of the academia is trying to play that role. Many of the small companies trying to play that role, but they don't have the resources, or in this case, access to the space to do it. So therefore, and then another plug to GovOps, there was actually analysis being asked to create something called the CalCompute in the state of California. That from what is the feasibility, what is the purpose of that, who is the user of that? Is that also foster an environment where this type of checks and balance and testing could be keeping up with the commercialization of the AI side of it? And then finally, MOUs. The MOUs with the California public school system, from community college to CSU to the UCs, focusing on workforce development, focusing on getting more knowledge to our general society, whether it's a faculty, whether a student, whether their family. Through education, you level up people's understanding and literacy when it comes to AI. When there's more understanding is there, it helps engagement and it helps encourage this community who typically are left behind, making sure that they have a seat at the table. So I think the combination of all of that is California's way to making sure that we have a well-balanced approach when it comes to implementation of AI.
It's critical that we, of course, protect consumers and society, but also allow innovation and economic growth to flourish. Red teaming, critical, 100%, right? And those teams play a major role inside the company to ensure that the products before they're released are safe and are giving good results. Open source allows people to look under the hood. So imagine a car and you want to see the engine. It allows folks to really test whether that model is performing the way that it should be performing, right? And so as a company, we're always open towards hearing the criticism and the feedback, whether these models, these products are effectively working or not. Yes?
Hi, I'm Janice Loka. I'm a K-12 educational consultant and advocate for marginalized students. So kind of talking about workforce development with K-12 schools, I also am wondering whether it's policy or private to public, what's being done to ensure that there's equitable access to technology for socioeconomically disadvantaged students, or and also in terms of how is AI being used to enhance education, and for students to learn how to use AI tools like ChatGPT effectively, but not to replace critical thinking or communication skills, because we're already seeing a lot of disconnect with face-to-face or ability for young people to be able to communicate. And then there's also the AI for using for data analysis within the school systems, because the schools collect a lot of data as mandated by the California Department of Education. But a lot of that data, like the unhoused communities, suspensions of Black and brown students, etc., are not analyzed in a way, like AI could be really impactful in helping schools support their communities better, and it's particularly students who are overlooked. So I know, but I'm just wondering of the impact of what's being done for K-12 education.
I feel like this is a whole nother panel we can get into, and I think we literally just got the sign that we're out of time. I think why don't we find time to talk over lunch if you're open to? I think the short answer is what you brought up. It's a prime example. That's why we keep on using the word that is a measured approach, right, when it comes to implement AI. And yes, there's lots of conversation within administration that earlier is it K-12 or is it 9-12, right? So that also makes the differentiation into when do you actually introduce the capability to the AI that is a way that is helpful and not detrimental, that becomes a crutches to people's way of thinking. So let's take it offline. And I feel like, again, this is, but maybe just to wrap it up, and I'll let you wrap it up, is this conversation has all you have brought up, I want to emphasize, is not a exclusive technology-focused conversation. It is a societal change conversation, and workforce, our people needs to be at the center of it.
And with that, thank you, Amy and Zaki, for joining me on the panel here. Would love to talk about education and AI. And thank you to all of you.